Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell, I'm doing this video soft spoken. It is always highly requested, and I just pre-recorded 3 videos where I whisper, and I need to give my voice a break. It might sound a little hoarse actually. So today's video I'm going to be ranking the Harry Potter books. I just want to say well, there's 2 things I want to say. One, I haven't actually read these books in a long time. I used to read them on a loop. Like I was done with the 7th and I would immediately restart with the 1st, and I would do this for years. But I haven't read them in a while. So I don't remember necessarily always the details why a book isn't my favorite. I just know that my overall feeling is that it is, and I know which ones are my favorites and which ones aren't. So for some of them, it's going to be more of like a generic explanation as to why they're not my favorite. But I'll do my best to like explain it properly. And then 2, after I did my Zelda ranking video, there were some people who really disagreed with me. A lot of people I think watched that video that don't know ASMR. They were just Zelda fans, and I fully appreciate that. Like I kind of love it when people disagree with me because I like seeing it from other people's perspective. But I just want to say, keep it polite, you know. It's ultimately all fiction, and if you don't agree with my ranking, that's fine. Just keep it polite. Actually, Kara ASMR did a video on this, and I completely didn't agree with her ranking, and I was like, girl, your ranking is very different from mine. And she said she was looking forward to seeing mine, although I don't know if she actually watches my channel. But yeah, like mine is completely different. So I fully get if yours is, and I would love it if you actually leave me your ranking in the comments below. Just keep it polite, you know. So I'm gonna start off with my least favorite book in the series, which is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The second book. This is one of those where I can't fully say why it's my least favorite. It just is. There's a lot of things that happen in this book that are not my favorite. The whole Chamber of Secrets itself with, I don't know, the whole Chamber of Secrets itself I find a little bit overkill. I don't necessarily like the whole basilisk thing, the Aragog thing. Like, I get that it's all part of the story, and I just want to point out that I love every single one of these books. Some I just love less than others. And it is very near and dear to my heart. I don't know, it's just my least favorite. It's the one that every time I have to read it, I'm like, all right, let's just get through Chamber of Secrets to get to the rest. There are parts of it I really love. Like, for example, the flying of the Fort Anglia to Hogwarts I thought was brilliant. And then Professor Lockhart, who, as horrible, like, as bad as a teacher as he was, I really loved him. And just the diary, the use of Tom Riddle's diary, I thought was genius. But yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of parts of it that I just don't like. The voices that he hears, the fact that he speaks parcel tongue, it doesn't like bother me that much, but it just all came together in one book, and I thought it was a bit much and just very creepy as well. I think maybe that's also part of it. I think it's a very creepy book. Not by any means the darkest in the series, just kind of a little bit creepy, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just my least favorite. But it does introduce one of my absolute favorite characters, which is Dobby. But it also introduces Moaning Myrtle, who, as much as she's a beloved character of the Harry Potter world, I find pretty annoying. So yeah, I don't know. Chamber of Secrets in last place. Hate me in the comments all you want. Not my favorite. Then in 6th place, and I know I'm gonna get roasted for this because this is a lot of people's favorite book, I'm pretty sure, but it's Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Why don't I like this book? Oh, no, not why don't I like this. Why do I love it less than others? It's very similar to a TV show that I love. And then when the next season they introduce a bunch of new characters, I don't love it that much anymore. And I feel like that's what happened with this book. They brought in so many characters in this book. And yes, they were all temporary. Most of them weren't part of the rest of the story, but there were so many new characters in it. And I think what fundamentally bothers me about this book is that once again, Harry got involved in something he shouldn't have. Like when his name, obviously you could have predicted it, but when his name came out of the Goblet of Fire, I was like, of course. And you understand later why it came out of the Goblet of Fire, but it just bothered me. I was like, why? Like, why? Yes, I know it's called Harry Potter, but why not Ron? Or why not Hermione? Like, or why any of them? Like, why not just tell the story without Harry being in it? I don't know. It just it bothered me. And the whole fight between him and Ron, I was totally on Ron's side. I was like, yes, he's always being treated as a sidekick, which he isn't. Yeah, I don't know. There's just not, like, I don't know. Just things that bother me. But things that I did love about it were some of the trials. I love that Hermione dated Victor Crumb. He was like the most wanted person by girls in school at that moment, and he picked Hermione. Well, he didn't pick her, but like he went out with Hermione, who was not interested in him in the beginning at all, and who's seen as the biggest nerd in the school, and I loved that. And I really loved the maze at the end. In the movie, it is completely lame. Nothing really happens in it. Like, when I first watched the movie and Dumbledore said, in the maze you won't find any enemies, you'll just have to face yourself. I was like, what are you talking about? No enemies. In the book there are. By the way, I forgot to say this in my intro. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. I will be also ranking the movies in the next video because that ranking is very different from the books. Goblet of Fire is actually much higher on my movie ranking than the book is. But I did love the maze in the book. It was filled with riddles and like the Sphinx and monsters, and I just thought it was a much cooler maze. And the whole resurrection of Voldemort at the end, I thought was also really, really well done. And this is definitely the book that made it from children's series to adult series, or at least young adult. I wouldn't let my 9-year-old read this book. I think the ending is pretty freaky. It's more freaky in the movie, but I think it's the first book in the series that has a death in it. In the other books, obviously they talk about death, but this is the first book where a death actually happened. And the whole Pontiff thing where Harry sees the trial of Barty Crouch Jr., the whole story actually of how Barty Crouch Jr. escaped from prison with the switch with his mother and everything, again, not in the movie, very, very nice part of the book. I think it's as sad as it is creepy. So there are definitely a lot of parts I love about this book, but again, it's one of those where I just don't enjoy picking it up and rereading it as much as all the others. So, sorry. Then in 5th place for me is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the very first book. It bothers me to no end that in the United States this is called the Sorcerer's Stone. They changed it because they didn't think Americans would know what a philosopher is. Europeans don't know what a philosopher is. Like, it's explained in the book. That's how I know what a philosopher is. I mean, I know philosophy, but in this context, it's something else. I don't think they needed to change it for Americans. Like, I find that a little bit condescending, to be honest. So, it's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And, it's the thinnest story of them all. I think the reason that it's not last for me, because not a lot happens in this book, but I think the reason that it's not last for me is because it is the first. Like I said, not a lot happens in terms of action because it spends a long time explaining everything, but it does introduce you to the magical world, to Diagon Alley, to Hogwarts. There's so many things that you learn for the first time, characters that you meet. I mean, you meet everyone for the first time, and I really love that. And what I love in this book is the final part where they go through the trap door to find Quirrell in that room with the Philosopher's Stone. I think that, actually, if you're American, let me know this. Is it actually called the Sorcerer's Stone in the book? Like the stone that Harry finds that produces the elixir of life, is it called the Sorcerer's Stone in the book? I'm guessing so. Because for us, obviously, it's called the Philosopher's Stone. And it is in the movie as well, unless they remade it for America, but I doubt that. Although I will say this about, well, actually, I'll bring this up when I review movies. I don't want to get too off track. But anyway, that part in the book where they find the Philosopher's Stone is so good. In the movie, they cut out a lot. Like, each teacher at Hogwarts created a puzzle of sorts to get through until you reach that final room. And in the movie, they cut out a lot of them. And I really, really love it. I think I love just the puzzles in the book. I think they did a really good job at it. It's very inventive. And yeah, this book is very near and dear to my heart. It's the first one, man. I mean, it started it all, and I love it's as it's thin. It's a quick reread. I love just picking it up and reading it in like 2 days and just getting through it. I really should. Maybe if I had reread this before my Harry Potter pub quiz, I wouldn't have failed so miserably. Yeah. So 5th place. I kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I feel like it should be higher, but as I said, I love all of them so much. So 5th place, and then in 4th place for me is, well, actually, yeah, it is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I'm not going to lie, this ranking is based a lot on the movie because it's been a long time since I've read this book and I don't remember that much of it. It's a huge book too, so I'm sure that there's a lot in it that I'm leaving out. Yeah, I don't know. Let me just open it for a second and take a look. Oh yeah. I find, like, I'll talk more about the movie in my other video, but I found that the movie was very focused on teenage stuff and, like, romances and stuff like that, which I didn't appreciate. And given how big this book is, I think I have a gripe with the fact that they probably left out a lot of detail. But like I said, I don't remember so much about it, so I'm sorry. There's one thing about it that I know I don't like, and that's the fact that the occlumency lessons that Snape was giving Harry went on for too long, I think, no, that wasn't in this book. That was in Order of the Phoenix. Oh, that wasn't Order of the Phoenix. Why is this? Okay, maybe it's just lower on my list because I don't remember it. Maybe there's nothing much memorable happened in it. That can't be true. Nope, I don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know. Like, looking through it, I do know that this is the book where Harry goes through the Ponsieve with a lot of different memories. He has to get Slughorn's memory, who, by the way, I love. I love Slughorn. And yeah, I do love all the memories they go through. I love the fact that we learn so much about Tom Riddle's past, that we learn about his mother being a squib and his father being a muggle, and like the reason that he hates his father so much because he's a muggle, and according to him abandoned his mother, which is not really the full story, but you know. And I do love I don't know, like there's a lot of things in this book that I think are really well done. Unfortunately, it's also the book where Dumbledore dies, which is not my favorite. But again, for the movies, it kind of was, because I'm not a big fan of Michael Gambon playing Dumbledore. And my thought was, great, at least after movie 6, I won't have to see him that much anymore. But in the story, I really loved Dumbledore, so I was really sad. But at the same time, I kind of felt it was right, because I don't know, I kind of felt like Dumbledore couldn't be in the story forever, bailing Harry out. It was like Harry had to stand on his own 2 feet. I do love that Snape stepped up and made the unbreakable vow to protect Malfoy. Find it kind of poetic as well that Snape killed Dumbledore, but again, not really, because he was dying anyway. It's the book where at the end, and even me, who has unwavering faith in Snape, even I was like, is this going to turn out to be one of those, Snape was always bad and I'm going to hate this series now? Or are we going to find out that he was like a double agent? So yeah, there is a lot that happened in this book that I really, really love, but I don't remember it that well, so I think that's probably why it's not higher up on my list, because I don't think it was memorable enough for me, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with, and maybe when I reread it, I'll disagree with myself. I'll be like, what? Why isn't this a number 1? But it just isn't right now. Yeah, it's also like just like a very big book for the fact that I don't remember much of it. So then in 3rd place for me is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I really love this book. It has the same back cover. Hello, J.K. Rowling. This is a book that this is the first book that I queued for. So this was released, all of them I think were released at midnight, but I didn't, was this the first one that was released when I was living in Ireland? I don't know. When was Half-Blood Prince released? 2005. Yes, I moved to Ireland in 2005. I think it would have been released right before I moved. Maybe right after I moved. But I think this always comes out around the summer, so I think I bought this before I moved. I seem to remember this is the only book I bought when I lived in Ireland. And in Belgium at the time, not a lot of bookstores, and especially not the town I lived in, would have opened at midnight. So this is the first one that I queued for. And I was so excited. I was very lucky because I got there at like 11:30. There was a queue outside the mall. But my friends, bless them, had been there for like an hour and were holding a spot for me. So I went, met up with them in like near the front of the queue and got this book. Came home around, I think it was 1, because I lived quite far at that time. It had like a long drive. So came home around 1 a.m. and read it all through the night, which was one of the best experiences I ever had, honestly. It was pitch black outside. It was really quiet. I just had my nightlight on. I was under the covers just reading this book. And I stopped around 6 a.m. I think at that point I had a little bit left. Probably about almost half the book left to read. And then I picked it up again in the evening and stopped reading at the last chapter because I didn't want to finish, because this was the last story. And finished it the next day. I would have finished it in 1 day, but I couldn't. Yeah, I love this book. I think so many great things happen in this book. A lot of people find the beginning part boring because of the whole traveling part. You know, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are on the run and they travel a lot through different forests and with the tent, and not a lot happens, but I think a lot happens. Again, in the movie, the story's a little bit more boring than it is in the book. I love that we finally learn Snape's real story. I mean, who did not cry at that, be honest? The fact that, his tears, Harry could use in the Pensieve and then see what was going on. Like, my friend and I don't actually see her, like, I don't actually speak to her anymore, I think, but she was a good friend of mine when I was living in Belgium. We both bought the Order of the Phoenix book the day it was released and read it in, like, not one day, we read it in 5 days, and she finished an hour before me, and we called each other, we're on the phone forever. And that was when I don't know if a lot of people saw it before us, but we then came up with the theory that Snape was in love with Harry's mother. And I love that in the last book that was confirmed. And that we see that he secretly really cared for Harry. Like, he was really trying to protect him because he was Lily's son, but he also hated him because he was also James's son and not his. And yeah, I kind of love that. And then the Battle of Hogwarts happens as well, where we lose a lot of really, really great characters. But it's such an epic battle, and some people really step up. Neville just thrived in this book, which kudos to him, because I always loved Neville. And he grew so much in the series, and he was like really just the epitome in this book. And just the way this book starts as well, I love the 7 Harrys, where everyone just selflessly sacrificed themselves to look like Harry so they could all fly away from the Death Eaters and nobody would know who the real Harry was. And I really love the part before that where the Dursleys take off and Dudley shows for the first time that he doesn't resent Harry anymore, that after he saved him from the Dementors in Order of the Phoenix, he's really grateful to him and has kind of been secretly reaching out to be his friend, which Harry didn't notice. And while we find out much later, from like years after the story ends, that they're not really friends, that they see each other to let their kids hang out, but that they don't really talk much, I like the fact that they do still see each other, and that Dudley definitely changed after the Dementor attack and really bonded with Harry, and this is kind of it. And also the scene between him and Petunia, where I think for the first time you see how much Lily's death upset Petunia, and also partly why she treated Harry the way she did, even though that's not excusable, but it's a little bit more of insight into that whole thing. So I don't know, I just love this book. I think it wrapped up a lot of stories really nicely, and I like the fact that half of it is very slow paced and the other half is very fast paced. Also the scene in the Ministry where they use Polyjuice Potion on other people and try to steal the locket from Umbridge. God, I love that scene so much. So then at number 2 is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And I already know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, because I think generally this is people's least favorite book, because it is A, the thickest book, and B, a lot of people find it not much happens in it. But why do I love it? I'll tell you what I don't like about it. The fact, the occlumency lessons that Snape gives Harry to prevent Voldemort from reading his mind, I think they went on too long. I think they could have been a lot shorter. I do love the fact that when Harry parries one, he finally sees why Snape hates his father and Sirius and Lupin so much, and Peter, I think, at that point as well, because they were bullies to Snape. They really bullied him, and it kind of knocked his dad off a pedestal, where he was like, oh, my dad wasn't as perfect as I thought he was, and I really, really like that. And it was also Snape at his, I think, like, most vulnerable moment in the whole series. So I love that. There's so many things I love about this book. I love that that we see Grimmauld Place for the first time. that Harry gets a glimpse of hope of maybe one day living with Sirius, his godfather, because he has Grimmauld Place. He learns a lot about his backstory, that we get to know the backstory of the Order, and that it's back now, and who is all part of it. I don't like that Harry is such a brat in this book. Like, he's really angry, which is understandable, but it's a little bit overboard. Like, he's just annoying in this book. But yeah, I love the Order stuff. And the battle in the Ministry at the end, I love. Again, Sirius dies in this book. Not my favorite moment. I did love Sirius a lot, and I don't know if I'll ever accept that she decided to kill him. I thought it was funny that J.K. Rowling once said in an interview that her husband walked in after she had written the scene and she was crying, and he went, why are you so upset? And she said, I just had to kill off one of my favorite characters. And he went, well, don't do it then. And she thought, that's not how books work. And like, it was so funny because she obviously could make the decision not to do it, but she felt it was important to the story. And she is also one of her favorite characters, so she was really upset that she killed him off. But yeah, so am I. But my absolute favorite scene in this book, and it is my favorite scene in all of the Harry Potter books, and it is why it is ranked so high, is the St. Mungo's hospital scene. And they cut it out of the movie completely, and it annoys me so much. I love that whole scene, from them walking in and seeing the names of all the different departments and all the people coming in with the different magical injuries. That was super funny. And then the fact that Arthur Weasley let a doctor do stitches on him because the magical fixes weren't working, and Molly just went berserk. The fact that they find Lockhart, who, since his memory spell rebounded in Chamber of Secrets, has been living there to this day and still doesn't remember who he is. And then my absolute favorite part, the fact that they run into Neville and know finally what happened to his parents. Harry already knew from Goblet of Fire but never told anyone. And then they all just found out. And, Neville being seemingly embarrassed, not wanting them to tell anyone, them being like, we wouldn't dream of telling anyone. And just like, Neville's mother coming up and giving him the little wrapper. And just this whole story in St. Mungo's I thought was fantastic. I thought it was equal parts funny and equal parts sad. And I can't wait to get to this part. Another part I really loved is how they visit the Ministry. I could care less for Harry's trial. I thought that was a little drawn out, but the fact that they have to go through the phone booth and like dial in the code, and I don't know, there's just so many parts to this book that I thought were brilliant and that I really, really love. And I can understand why it's not people's favorite, because it is a very long book. And there is maybe a little bit too much detail in this book. Like, they probably could have cut out about a quarter of it. But it doesn't bother me. I love reading it. And it is one of my faves. Which brings me to my absolute favorite, and this shouldn't really be a surprise because I've mentioned this a few times before, but my favorite book is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Again, this is going to be bottom of my list for movies because it is my least favorite movie, but I love this book. It's not very long, so again, you get through it pretty quickly. It is the book that I always grab if I need something to read when I go on vacation. It is the book I take with me if I have nothing else. I just reread this book so many times. I don't even know where to start with this one. From the introduction of the night bus to forgetting what I was going to say. To the elective subjects that they get to take. Like, they take particularly divination, where we're introduced to Trelawney. It does have Sirius and Remus in it for the first time. Yes, they are some of my favorite characters. That's not the reason I love this book so much, but I definitely love the addition of Remus. I thought he was a brilliant professor. the Marauder's map was introduced in this book, which is also such a big part of the whole series. And also just the whole thing with the anime guy, I think is the plural of that. I think this is the first book where we learn a little bit more about Harry's parents, because Lupin tells them stories, and just the whole werewolf thing and the Shrieking Shack, which I adore. And a lot of people, I just want to get this out of the way, a lot of people have commented on Scabbers and said, how come if the twins have the Marauder's map, they didn't notice in 12 years that there was a man named Peter Pettigrew sleeping in their brother's bed? But I don't think that's an argument that flies, because the Marauder's map is used to sneak around the castle, and that's what they used it for. They were checking the area that they were in to see if there was anyone there, and they were checking specific people to see where they were at the time that they were sneaking around. They weren't ever looking at Ron in his dorm because they weren't worried about him catching them. So, and also in the movie, the map doesn't look that crowded, but if you read it in the book, every single person and every single room of Hogwarts is on there. That is one crowded map. So I don't think you would have just noticed that. I'm pretty sure that if you look at that map in real life, which I know it's not, you would practically see Harry sleeping on top of Ron, you know, because there's so many names packed in. So I really don't think that argument flies. I thought it may be why this is my favorite book. I thought the whole part of Scabbers being Peter Pettigrew in disguise was a stroke of genius, because we've known Scabbers since book 1. He was just there. He was Ron's rat passed down in his family, been with his family for 12 years, just his pet. And the fact that she wrote him in for 2 books before finally revealing in the 3rd book that he was a cold-blooded killer was incredible. Like the fact that, I mean, he killed all those muggles, he betrayed Harry's parents to Voldemort. I don't know, man, I thought it was just brilliant. So well done. And I don't know, from a lot of, I think this is a lot of people's favorite book. It is for a lot of my friends anyway, and I really, really love it. Yeah, that is my absolute fave for a lot of different reasons. Honestly, one of them being that this is the only book that has nothing to do with Voldemort. Really, we don't see Voldemort in it. Not that that bothers me. I have no issue with Voldemort as a character. But I like that we got one book in the series that wasn't about him. And yeah, I love this book so much. So that is it for my ranking. Let me know how different yours is. Give me your ranking in the comments down below, and watch out for part 2, which will be me ranking the movies. And I'll see you all soon.